Welcome, welcome, welcome. How is everyone doing on this fine, fabulous day? Thank you, Dolores. Thank you, Brandy, for stopping in and joining me on this beautiful, it is actually an extremely beautiful day out there today. Uh, really awesome, little on the warm side, but as long as you're not out there for too long, it is amazing today here in the Treasure Valley, here in Boise, Idaho, Meridian. So, we got a couple things that we want to talk about today, and an awful lot of this comes back around to the issues of, well, a lot of it's coming down to what's going on with SCOTUS and what's going on with Congress right now. Okay, we've had another revelation from the Supreme Court of the United States that once again they have decided to side with federal authoritarian practices. Mainly that federal agents, as long as they are federal agents, can commit crimes against the people and not be sued for them. Okay, so like one of the examples given was a case in which a young girl, teen girl, had a federal agent that manufactured, I mean, literally out of whole cloth, created documentation saying this young woman was part of a sex trafficking ring. Okay? Underage. Sex trafficking ring never existed. All the documents associated with it were completely forged. Basically, this federal agent singled her out, put her on the chopping block, and put her in prison for a crime that never existed. The Supreme Court ruled yesterday that this young woman has no recourse to sue the federal agent who stole several years of her life by putting her in prison falsely. Now, this taken in conjunction with some of the other extremely authoritarian rulings that have come out, such as reinforcement of what was going on with the Customs and Border Patrol, the CBP. Okay, now CBP actually goes clear back to 1954. Okay, the 100-mile demilitarized zone, that 100 miles in which the Customs and Border Patrol is able to operate with impunity. What was going on in 1954? Yes, post-World War II, we were looking at McCarthyism. You know, we were looking at the laws coming out of McCarthyism. During that time, we actually, yes, you're right. No justice. Those who are responsible for making sure that there is justice have literally decided that they will not side with justice. The Supreme Court, Thomas Clarence, has written that if you've gone to trial, even if were denied due process because your lawyer was incompetent, because the prosecuting attorney hid evidence, if you were denied, doesn't matter. You went to trial, you're guilty. But we are looking at Customs and Border Patrol. Now, we talked a little bit about this last week, but 1954 was when the 100-mile DMZ was actually created. McCarthyism, the Big Red Scare. We gave Customs and Border Patrol the leniency to operate independent of the Constitution without constitutional restraints up to 100 miles within U.S. borders. Okay, now Customs and Border Patrol has argued that that is every land border as well as within 100 miles of any and every international water delimiter. And so that means all the way around the United States, all the way around. 2/3 of Americans, 2/3. Yeah, I'm with you, particularly this Supreme Court. It has decided that it is not interested in justice. It is not interested in the rights of the people. It has decided almost unilaterally that it is 100% pro-federal authoritarianism. Okay. So, like 2/3 of the United States currently lives within the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, that allows the Customs and Border Patrol to operate with impunity. In addition to that, the Supreme Court has decided that federal agents, regardless of the rules, regardless of the rights that they break and violate, cannot be sued. So, I mean, literally, you have no recourse anywhere in the United States when a federal agent decides to violate your rights. Qualified immunity has been extended 100%. We have 100% unqualified qualified immunity. Break rules anytime, anywhere, violate rights anytime, anywhere, and you have no recourse whatsoever. Now, in addition to that, one of the things we have coming up, yes, the well-regulated militia and the red flag laws. Now, I know there's an awful lot of people out there that are actually firmly in belief that the red flag laws are important, that they have a vital role. At this time, think about who's responsible for enforcing those red flag laws. These are federal agents who have no obligation whatsoever to respect your rights. At this point, it's doubtful that this Supreme Court would even require that they ask for a warrant before they decide to commit to a no-knock raid, come through your door, shoot you in your sleep, rifle through your house, take what they want, and then declare that you were in violation and you attempted to attack them. And nobody can tell the world any different because you're dead. That is literally the world that we're looking at right now, because total immunity, pure fascism. That is exactly where we are. Oh, yes, absolute. Another agnostic. 1930s Germany. That is essentially where we are. And I'm glad you bring that up. Reason why is because we are deeply into Pride Week right now. And we have significant fear-driven interests that are saying the degeneracy of the Weimar Republic. Okay? The degeneracy. This is what was going on in the capital at the height of the collapse of the Weimar Republic. Okay? Now, it's ironic because there are a number of plays and movies that have been written about that particular era. Gun rights, they'll get comfortable and expand it to whatever gets their interest. Okay, so we're looking at gun rights right now. Like they said, that's just low-hanging fruit. Right now, it's the AR-15s. Okay, next, it's up the pistols. Beyond that, you start looking at personal armament, personal protection. Oh no, you bought body armor. Okay, your body armor, just so that you don't get shot going to the grocery store. You know, because you can't take a gun, so only people who have guns are criminals, and cops who have no right, no reason to observe the laws or your rights to life. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those scenarios that we are actually looking at right now with regards to Uvalde. Whether or not you have a right to actually intercede and defend your family, members of your community. It's actually come out that there was an individual who was on the police force, mind you. He was on the police. He received a call from his wife, who was inside the school, saying she had been shot. Okay, while he was receiving that call and prepping to go in, he was detained by his fellow officers, relieved of his weapon. Yeah. If any of them had been a federal agent, there would be no way to prosecute them, no way to hold them responsible. The irony of this is the one person who actually went in and finally, um, resolved the situation in Uvalde was a federal agent, was a Customs and Border Patrol agent who, operating within 100 miles of the border, had the ability to violate, break every rule, break protocols without worry of repercussion. Yeah, folks, take a little time to live with that. Take a little time to realize that the only reason there are still children alive from the Uvalde incident was because a Customs and Border Patrol agent can't be prosecuted for anything he may or may not have done in relationship to relieving the situation in Uvalde. Seriously. I mean, there is no law. There are no rules. You bring this up, agnostic. Yes, police don't have a constitutional requirement to save or help people. That is something that's actually been upheld by the current court in association with everything else that they've done. In addition to the fact that they have no constitutional requirement to save or help people, they've actually been given qualified immunity to kill you because they don't like you. Again, so why are we funding? Why are our taxes going to people who have been given a license to kill? A license to kill the good people who have been paying their wages. You bring this up, Mike. Our government's been curtailing our rights since the beginning. The Alien and Sedition Act, second president. Well, dude, it wasn't even the second president. George Washington, the first president under the United States Constitution. Okay, mind you, not the first president of the United States, because we had 13 years in which we were operating under the Articles of Confederation. Okay, the Constitutional Convention that created the United States government as we know it now. Okay, 1986 or 1786, 1789, somewhere in there. Okay. It's an interesting topic, Mike. That is an interesting topic, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the thing is, 1986, our first president, George Washington, okay, literally, people of Pennsylvania were revolting against a whiskey tax that they felt was unfair. He sent federal troops to side with the Pennsylvania governor, who was the one who instituted the tax, in order to prevent competition with his own whiskey production. Okay. The Pennsylvania governor wanted a monopoly. He was using his role as governor to create protectionism for his own company, his own corporation, his own whiskey production. And George Washington sent federal troops to kill American citizens, Pennsylvania residents, who didn't want to pay the governor's tax. Okay? I mean, clear back, 1989, our first president. Accelerationists and ethno-nationalists in the in the bureaucracy or the bureaucracy. I think you got a little bit flipped up, but this is one of those things. Okay, accelerationists. These are the people who want to accelerate the collapse of the government in order to create a new nation, whether that's through the development of a new constitutional convention. And there are arguments for that. A lot of people have been talking about a new constitutional convention in order to recreate, reimagine the United States as the republic that we believe it should be. Now, there's some interesting concepts behind that, especially with regards to the originalism that we are currently dealing with our current courts, or with our current Supreme Court of the United States. So we'll actually get around to talking about what that is. The other is the ethno-nationalists. Now, there's an awful lot of organizations across the United States. Patriot Front's one, Project Europa, Nation of Islam, the Hoteps, several other organizations that are interested in creating ethno-states. Okay, now from an ethno-state perspective, what this is it is a small commune, which ideally, according to them, they actually want to expand it to the size of a state. So from the Aryan nation's perspective, Patriot Front, an awful lot of Patriot prayer, a lot of these ethno-statists in the Pacific Northwest, they're actually looking at a Christian or a white Christian ethno-state. Okay, so we take a look at ethnic differences. Okay, during Bosnia-Herzegovina, the Bosniaks and the Herzegovians, they lived as neighbors side by side. The only thing that differentiated their ethnicity was which church they went to on Sundays. If they went to the mosque, they were Bosniaks. If they went to a Catholic church, they were the Herzegovians. And that was all that decided a civil war. These people had been intermarrying for a while. So, I mean, they were essentially identical. The ethnic divide was which church they went to on Sunday. So here we are looking at this similar situation where we have people here in the Pacific Northwest that have survived these ethnic wars. We have Bosniaks. We got a Bosniak mosque here in Boise. We have white supremacists. We actually have a Shield of Christ, I believe it is, Baptist church here in the state that is called for the death of gay people. Okay, so we got all the makings of some sort of ethnic riot. And going back to this issue of ethno-nationalism, and as you mentioned, the Weimar Republic, 1930s Germany. What or who are we going to blame for the failings of the country? Or are we actually going to recognize that it's because we've allowed our government to run roughshod over us, create this hyper-authoritarian, broke, as that is what we are. We're nearly, 30 trillion in debt right now. And the real production in the United States, we're a service industry. We don't actually produce anything. We measure our value in service to each other. How much service does the banker provide you, lending money, which was printed out of thin air? How much service, your barista, that coffee comes from somewhere else. All they're doing is, grinding it down and giving it to you. So we continue to look at an awful lot of these things where we don't produce real. IKEA, it's temporary. Most of our homes right now, they're made out of not unstable, temporary materials. We no longer have the longevity, the durability of the homes that were created even 50 years ago. Everything's become temporary. Nothing we produce retains its value for very long. We're already looking at a housing market crash right now. Money that's been invested. People have come in and said, I'm going to pay $500,000 for that house. That house, as the market crashes within the next 2 or 3 months, will be only worth half that. Then the loan on the house will be underwater. So we're looking at temporary things, and the thing that we're looking at with regards to the Weimar Republic, Weimar Republic was going through massive hyperinflation at the time. When they started, okay, keep in mind, when they started putting people in the concentration camps, when they started looking at moving people in, it wasn't just the Jews that ended up in the concentration camps. You ended up with significant number of the gay community that were the artists in Berlin, that were doing the shows, that were doing the masquerades, that were doing, the performances that everybody in the capital went to see. One day they're stars. The next day they're wearing a pink triangle and they're behind wire. That's what we were looking at. Here we are coming up on that stage when we are looking at people who are beginning to fear people simply because they're different. And this is where it becomes more responsible for those people who see, as Brandy, what you bring up, the shit about to hit the fan, to stand up in defense of your neighbors. Because we're seeing the de-evolution of society. We are seeing the de-evolution of culture. And a lot of it is the Supreme Court continues to come down in support of the heavy authoritarian. Now, a lot of you out there are going, well, it's fascism. Others are going, well, it's communism. Well, it doesn't matter. Fascism and communism, as we understand it, as Americans, as we have been taught to understand what communism and fascism mean, is the hyper-authoritarianism. It is the authorization by the government to purge the insurgents, to purge the seditious, to purge people who think independent, like myself and like you, in order to silence us, in order to keep us from preventing what happens next. Now, are we there yet? God, I hope not. Otherwise, I just put a target on the back of my head. Thought exercise. Mike, man, are your enemies the supremacists having a LARP parade or the Karen at the DOJ? Yes, actually. And the two actually fuel each other. It's one of the things that's interesting about this particular exercise. The supremacists out doing the LARPing, doing their parades, 31 of them stepping out of the back of a U-Haul at a pride parade. They give rise to the fear that the Karen at DOJ now has a target. They can start looking at extremist organizations and saying, well, they're actually active now. They are doing something. So not only do they target the active supremacist organizations, they're actually starting to go after some of the more quiet ones. Our friend Eric Parker, part of the 3%. Okay. He's already proven that he's willing to draw a bead on federal agents in violation of human rights. He's not exactly the kind of individual they want at the next stage, particularly when they start looking at the enforcement of the red flag laws. And there is that. It's the free speech. It's the association, freedom of association that we start getting into. Are the white supremacists? The question is once they start doing damage. Now, this was one of the things that we were looking at with regards to what was going on during Black Lives Matter. Less than 7% of the Black Lives Matter events were actually disrupted by violence, arson, etc. And a significant number of those 7 events, it wasn't actually the organizers that caused the chaos. It was agent provocateurs. And here we are. We have white supremacist organizations, white ethnostatists, separatists who are doing their own demonstrations. So now we have both sides that are stepping up with agent provocateurs inside the organizations. They're creating disruption, creating options for targets for organizations like the Department of Justice, the ATF, DEA. All of them are becoming targets right now. Yes, another agnostic. The Standard, slaves, crisis stage. Yes, we had our crisis stage of capitalism. What happens next, though, isn't necessarily in Marx's wheelhouse. We can have a discussion about that a couple different ways from Sunday. Marx had his opportunity to prove his theory of what needed to happen post-capitalism. That didn't go so well. Stalin jacked that up hard. Mao jacked that up hard. Lenin jacked that up hard. We may need to try something different. BlackRock versus Main Street, okay, and the ESG. An awful lot of these things that are going on right now with regards to the 4 branches of government. It's 5 branches of government right now. 5 branches of government. The executive, the legislative, the judicial, all of which have been bought by K Street, the lobbyists, and the mainstream media. Okay, our 5 branches of government right now literally control everything that's happening in the United States, except for you. You still have free will, believe it or not. Yes, you do. You may feel like you're being a little bit pressured every so often. Lord knows I feel it. And Brandy, a lot of this is communism versus fascism. Okay, there are differences. In my mind, not so much, because they're both authoritarian. As long as you have authoritarians in charge, they are going to go through the purge. You watched Stalin do it. You watched Lenin do it. You watched Mao do it. You watched Hitler do it. You watched Mussolini do it. Okay. If you don't believe in their ideology, they will make you go away. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. An agnostic. Have a clearly defined Bill of Rights. We're here in the United States right now. We have a very clearly defined Bill of Rights. We have 10 of them, actually. They aren't being particularly well respected at the moment. And yeah, capitalism, it definitely does. And a lot of this is the amount of protectionism that capitalism has been allowed to buy as a result of electing individuals who could be bought. Which again comes back to the issues where Mike has brought up the idea of accelerationism, versus the bureaucracy. Bureaucrats, at the end of the day, very rarely are interested in anything more than what the rest of us are interested in. That is their own personal welfare. Once my needs are met, then I'll worry about other people's needs. That is human nature. That is part of the individualism that is the culture in the United States. One of the things that we're looking at, though, is the rebuilding of community. If we can get away from that departure of the individualism, being able to create the bridge between respect for the individual and support from the community, so that we have that balance where people can come together and respect the diversification of our society. I mean, we have a lot of people that represent a significant amount of potential to what it means to being American. The diversity that this nation represents. Despite all the blood that's been spilled as a result, despite all of the labor that's been stolen as a result, there is still the working class that has continued to build. This is one of the things, yeah, Mike, absolutely. Eventually, everyone who resists the current regime gets labeled as a target. And that is what we are dealing with right now. We are dealing with a regime. Will it change in 4 years? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of it depends on whether or not we still have a nation that exists in 4 years. Ray Epps. God. Conspiracy theory, January 6th. Was he or was he not a federal agent? Was he or was he not a provocateur? It's going to be a good question. And you're right. Marx never finished the thought. What comes after the revolution? What comes after the revolution? More of the same, because we're stuck in a cycle of turnings. Every time we talk about revolution, every time we talk about that, what we are doing is we are sticking ourselves in revolution around the center. Okay? We're revolving. We never break orbit from what it is we're trying to fight, what it is we're trying to escape. All we do is change who's in charge. That's the problem with revolution. It's time that we start looking beyond that. It's time we take the next step, the step that Marx failed to take. Not revolution, but evolution. How do we take what we have right now and create something better from it? How do we reuse, reutilize? Because we need something different. I don't want to see it recycled, man. No. We need to get past recycling this. We need to get past the revolution. We need to get out of that. Reuse, repurpose, recreate, reinvent out of what was. Yeah, and right, Mike, this is one of those things. The melding of state and corporation. Okay, this is what Mussolini coined. This was the stronger together, government and industry. This is the thing where, okay, as much as I hate to do it because I'm not a real fan of Ayn Rand. Okay, Ayn Rand, her hero, her protagonist, John Galt. Okay, John Galt was the industry, the leader, the planner, the organizer, the labor multiplier. Okay, we'll go with that term because John Galt multiplied the capacity for labor. Without the labor, he would have been nothing. But as a multiplier, he was able to take the excess that was created by the others. Okay. Now, the thing is due to regulation, John Galt was stymied by government. In contrast, where we look at fascism, when we look at what Mussolini tried to create, what FDR was able to create was the unity of government and industry. Government and industry stronger together. It was, in a lot of ways, what Hitler tried to create when he brought in experts like Henry Ford to help build and create Volkswagen. Later was turned into making tanks. Okay, and yes, from the libertarian perspective, Mike, this is what you look at with regards to anarchy. Okay, the only defense against fascism and communism is to depower the government at every level. Okay, how do you build your community? In a lot of ways, the best way to the way you build community, the only way you can build community is from the grassroots. It's going out and meeting your neighbors, becoming part of that cooperative, becoming part of that organization, where the homeowners association, where you come to understand that there are boundaries, that there are personalities, that there are preferences, where you understand who in person is as the individual. Now, step into the individual. As part of an individual, you can join and become part of a greater whole. Now, the trick is in developing the ideas of community while respecting the individual, the diversification of your community, by inviting people in, by welcoming people in who are different, who are capable of creating new insights, creating new potential for your community. Agnostic. Okay. 2024, half the states refuse to accept the election results and the union will break apart. Okay. This is actually an interesting concept because while I was here not that long ago, I was talking to the Secretary of State of the state of Idaho. State of Idaho actually has one of the most secure and auditable election processes in the United States. We know who got elected here. And we're down to within 0.1%. We have that process. We have a process for ensuring that the process is secure. We have the process for validating that entire process. I believe in the canvassing process in the state of Idaho. I believe that our Secretary of State is operating with 100% integrity regarding who is elected in the state. Now, I know there are other states that don't necessarily hold that degree of faith in who runs their state elections. That makes the 2024 scenario, even the 2022 scenario, rather awkward in an awful lot of places. We've seen it. The elections right now for Nancy Pelosi. She's up for re-election in 2022. She has competition. There are an awful lot of people in California wondering, how does Nancy Pelosi, despite who she is, continue to get reelected year after year after year? After she takes time to show her COVID freezer full of ice cream from Europe, how does she continue to get elected year after year after her husband gets arrested for a DUI that magically disappears? How will she get reelected? We wonder. But that's California's problem. California has to look at that issue. California has to decide whether or not its Secretary of State can be trusted with the responsibility of running their election. To create a better society that is more equal. I don't know that equal is what we want as much as egalitarian. The reason why is because what different people want varies quite a bit. How do we give people what they want? I mean, we can go on. We can talk about making sure that everybody gets paid $70,000 a year, regardless of what job they are doing. That is equal. Is that what everybody wants? Are there other things that are associated with that? Are there other desires? Are there other things that people want? How do we create an egalitarian society that respects the differences and gives people the opportunity to be their best selves? And we can't do it with universal policies coming out of a federal think tank. It comes down to local governments. Okay, accepting of the diversity, current issue. Yeah, it is, especially as fear continues to develop. Colorophobia, the fear of clowns. The idea of seeing a strange face on a familiar body. We have people who've descended from cultures in the United States where seeing somebody with a strange face, seeing somebody with a different skin color inspires a stress reaction, triggers a reactive process in their minds, causes fear. Keep it small, you can control it. Government at the local level. Leave it unattended, and we take a look at what we're doing right now. We have an unattended government that has decided to print, $4 trillion, out of thin air. Keystroke. We keystroked $4 million into existence. When we keystroked $4 trillion into existence, we wiped out the labor of 1 million people. We wiped out the lifetime, the work of 1 million people. $2 million in their lifetime. 1 million people, when we keystroked 4 trillion into existence, we wiped out the life work of 1 million people. Yeah, in a sense. But if you ever get the opportunity to talk to the Secretary of State, not Lawrence Denny, but his deputies, if you ever get the opportunity to talk to them about what we've done with election security, we have a process at Boise State University, that is working through it. We have the INL. Yeah, I know notionally it's, the international or the nuclear energy laboratory. But they've actually done an awful lot of research into security, election security. We have these labs, we have these organizations that have done an awful lot of research, and they're currently working on getting access to an awful lot of the new stuff, in addition to maintaining the audit trail. Equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome. Okay, we have an awful lot of people right now that are looking for equality of outcome. That is not actually what people want, because people desire different things. In an egalitarian society, people want different things because we are made different. We are wired different. Some people are willing to take their $70,000 and spend it on other people. Other people want to take their $70,000 a year and spend it on things. Other people are perfectly happy spending that $70,000 a year raising their family and tending a garden out back. We need to give up on this idea of equality of outcomes if we're going to truly appreciate the concepts of diversity, diversification of an egalitarian society. Not everybody needs to be the same, folks. Outcomes do not need to be the same. Quality of opportunity, what we want to enjoy. And I agree, major reform for disability and retirement systems. The Libertarian Party has an interesting personality in it. In the name of Daniel Quiter, he's actually running for New York Congress as a libertarian. You get the opportunity to look him up. He is the single most unlikely libertarian candidate you will ever meet. And the reason why he's running as a libertarian is because in the last 4 years, he has come to understand what it means to be free from the disability system that has been created by the United States government. He's actually running on how to dismantle what is, because he's come to understand that what is does not work and does not maximize his opportunities. It does not create quality of life for him. By being able to step outside of the system system that so many of us would look at him and say he needs, because we're all innately ableist. I mean, we really are. Too many of us look at people like Daniel Quieter and say he needs the help. No. He's figured out how to do it. He's figured out how to manage it outside of the system. He's figured out that by giving the individual the tools he needs to create access, we don't need to place the burden on society to create access for every disability. Yes, we absolutely do need to take a look at our system of systems with regards to disability and retirement. It needs to be reformed. And it's quite possible that we may literally need to tear it down to its roots and rebuild it from scratch in order to make a system that works in a truly egalitarian fashion. How many of you are familiar with the concept of transhumanism? Okay? Transhumanism. The idea that man and machine, yeah, he is. He's on fire, man. He's on fire. The idea of better living through technology, transhumanism. And an awful lot of people look at these concepts like cyborgs. And ultimately, all transhumanism is taking the technology that exists to create more opportunities for those people who are currently experiencing, for lack of a better word, and I really hate this word, but for lack of a better word, dysfunction. And for people who aren't able to operate within the realm of normal, heteronormative, got all your fingers and all your toes and all your parts, the people who can't operate in that scope, we have a concept called transhumanism. Okay. Our Paralympians, okay, the people who are amputees, who are running on bionic legs, the little springs, transsexuals, people who identify as being a different gender, are able to go under surgery and become the person that they believe they are in their mind. The ability to make sure that other technology, cochlear implant, giving deaf people the ability to hear. Giving people the ability to see colors. Better living through chemistry, is another transhumanist aspect. The medicine, are you able to go faster? Push harder, be stronger. Use of steroids, while generally considered not healthy, we continue to see people who do it because they want to be bigger, they want to be stronger, they want to be more competitive. Ritalin. In order to pay more attention. Xanax. In order to be more relaxed. In order to take the edge off of the anxiety. Transhumanism, the ability to be more than what you think your natural self is capable of being. There's an awful lot of people that are scared of that right now. The idea that you shouldn't be using drugs, the idea that you shouldn't be enhancing yourself with bionics, with springs, or choosing to be different than what they believe God had intended you to be. This is an interesting point. Transhumanism is dangerous because of the people who will control it. Okay, we're starting with helping, but weaponized and turned against the vulnerable. It's one of those things where it comes down to the ethics of transhumanism, the ethics of the machinery. Okay, we are taking a look at some of the things right now with regards to the way Elon Musk is looking at technological implants in the mind in order to help people who have epilepsy, in order to help people who have Tourette's, brain disorders, mind disorder, functions. In the very real case that the person it is installed in does not necessarily have control of what is put in their mind, that is put in their body. We're already looking at Elon Musk's Teslas being able to be turned off remotely. Can you imagine having a pacemaker that can be turned off remotely? The ethics of transhumanism, Mike, it's a big issue. How do we create the security around the individual rights to create an egalitarian society where people can enjoy the advantages of transhumanism? Right? This is an interesting discussion. If the World Economic Forum is talking about it, we had better be talking about it too. Okay? Because right now, what they're talking about with regards to transhumanism and useless people is eugenics. Yes. We're back to that, folks. We're back to eugenics 100 years later. Yeah, people talking about eugenics. What do we do with the useless people? Mike, you bring up a point. Spend so much time figuring out whether or not you could. You never stop to think about whether or not you should. It's one of the reasons why ethics in science is so important. It is why the thought process. What are the reasons we shouldn't? So that we can put the controls in place. We proved that. Taya. Teen AI. What would it take? It took less than 24 hours for an artificial intelligence running on Twitter to be turned into a fascist. Some 24 hours. Because we didn't put the safeguards in place. We didn't put a moral code in place on an artificial intelligence. We didn't bother to install the 3 laws of robotics on an artificial intelligence. I mean, one of the core concepts of science fiction, one of the core concepts of the dystopia. What do we do to prevent dystopia? iRobot, the 3 laws. We created an AI chatbot, stuck it on Twitter for 24 hours with it installing the 3 rules, the 3 laws of robotics. In less than 24 hours, it was ready to exterminate humankind. And yeah, Brandy, you're not the only one. Depending on who gets to decide who is useless. And unfortunately, it's an awful lot of individuals with an awful lot of money who are very useless themselves without other people doing the work for them are the ones who get to decide who's useless. I don't know about you. I'm particularly resistant to that idea. Klaus Schwab, the rest of them at the WEF. I have no interest in letting them decide who is useless. We need to take a look at the equalizer in that situation right now, folks. We really do. Another ignite. Maybe we should have done more research of social media before letting it be distributed to developing minds. Yeah, probably. However, we are where we are. We got the opportunity to learn from it. We have the ability to communicate the way you and I communicate right now. Communicate with multiple people, to communicate, actually communicate ideas to groups, people and organizations all across the United States, all around the globe, and share these ideas of community rather than concepts of nationalism. It's about developing the relationships between you and I, while respecting our individuality and allowing, encouraging, inviting each other to grow. It's been an hour, folks. It's been an interesting conversation. I know there were things that we wanted to talk about that we didn't get to. Love the free flow of the conversation, what was going on. In the meantime, yeah, quite possible. Quite possible. Hopefully, we can stop it early this time. Meantime, family, friends, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. Enjoy the rest of your week. Love you guys.